Yeah. Did anyone have any apologies from your team members? People that indicated they couldn't make it to you?
Yeah, Brianna can't make it from our
Brianna?
team. Everyone else is here.
Okay.
Or
Anyone
coming.
else? Okay. So maybe we can just stay in one room, Susan, to check in. Great. So yes, as Susan mentioned, Fridays are really like fast paced, and the main aim is for you to kind of share the work that you've done in your teams, and we do a little bit of feedback. We've got 4 teams, so we'll allow for 10 minutes for both presentations and feedback and Q&A for each team, and then we will have maybe a little bit of time for some discussion at the end before we check out and get back to our days. So the check-in question for today is, what's coming up for you on this subject of accountability? So just anything that you've noticed as you start to read the content and think about the behaviors and patterns in your own team, or for you individually. And Susan, I will ask you to kick us off.
I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm reflecting on our esteemed leader, Mr. Joseph Lubin, how he says in town halls, for example, I want you to hold me to account and accountable. And my reflection is, if we can't see what he's doing, how can we hold him to account? So that's what's been coming up for me. Like, accountability is one thing, but knowing what people are doing so that they can be held to account, making that visible, is a big question that I'm holding. Maybe raise your hand and I'll choose somebody next. Madeline?
For me, I think, so Pegasus, we're lucky we've got fairly defined processes, at least in the part I'm in, about accountability and things like that. But now that we move outside our circle to work with other teams that aren't part of Pegasus, I find the accountability equation a lot more sort of complicated, because when we all work for Pegasus, we're all working towards a common goal for Pegasus. Once you start working with other teams, they're working towards a different overall goal. So when you make commitments, it's a bit more complicated about, which ones are more important and how do you be accountable? Yeah, cross-circle accountability. That's it.
Okay, I'll go. I'll elect myself. I think when I think about accountability, I can be accountable to my colleagues and team members, but I think it's me personally, if I don't deliver something, I'm the person that feels it the most. That feeling in your stomach of, oh my God, I didn't do it, like I didn't make the deadline. It's like the guilt cycle in my head is actually my own worst enemy. So I'd rather be accountable to people than myself in some ways. Who's next? Akila?
Sorry for the background noise. So accountability for me is something that, so I'm on Pegasus R&D, and something that we've been thinking about is my team is working on Ethereum 2.0 implementation, so like implementation of beacon chain, and there's a team in Russia that's interested in working with us, but because of like the Russian government or something, there's like complications with like them working with us or like becoming a part of consensus or something. So we're trying to figure out like how can we work with a team that's not a part of consensus on the same open source repo. So that's just something that's been in my mind about accountability.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to have to keep moving quite quickly. Who's next? Sean?
Hey guys, one thing that I was thinking was, what does accountability actually mean? And I raised this in the group, and I tried to substitute it by saying, does it mean that you're going to do what you say you're going to do? And I wanted to ask or understand more if that was an equal sign, or is accountability that plus something else? So that was something I raised.
Yeah, good question. We'll go into that at the end, hopefully. Thanks, Sean. Brett, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I think for me, something that's been coming up recently is that Catalyst is going through kind of an evolution right now. So there's a lot of change and a lot of redefinition of mission, values, focus, goals. And in that process, while still trying to hold people accountable has been, I think, challenging and difficult, or even defining who should be holding people accountable as well. And so trying to figure all of these different moving parts out at the same time has been, I think, a challenge.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Who should be holding people accountable? Thank you. Kamal, and if you are joining us with a screen off, it's obviously sometimes out of your control, but we do like to see people's faces, especially for the check-in, if possible.
I will turn on my camera. It may be a little dark. It is very dark. Moving around for some light. All right. I think for me, accountability requires, for you to say I'm holding someone accountable, or what does it mean for me? It means that I need to be super specific about the things that I'm asking for, as well as the other team member is specific about what they're asking for, when can they deliver, what is it, etc. Because you can say I'm holding you accountable for this, but really what are the details of this? And that's redefining what roles and responsibilities outside of job description, etc.
Nice. Yes. So it's related to quite a lot of things, and at the center is being specific. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll
Kristen. Oh, so go ahead, Karima, and then we'll go to Kristen.
Oh, cool. So I guess accountability is something I have been thinking about just from reading, but just from doing the Clue CEO, I think it's called that document. It's made me really think about roles and then like how that plays into accountability, and like I can lay out, like I would say the title, like the thing that's on my HR paperwork, but then I think about how that really doesn't even define what I do. And then so like how do people outside of like the circle I work in, how do they know how to not hold me accountable, but know what to expect from me? Because I work with like every circle. When community works with legal, solutions, finance, like everything. And so like figuring how to do all that and then still like maintain a process and hold others accountable in those processes too has been a challenge. It's been fun though, but whew, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot, Karima. Kristen.
I'm actually going to +1 all over that, because I also sit in a position where not only do I have clients or partners that are all the circles, because I manage this hub, and I'm partnering with finance on brand new processes of how we think about budgets, how we think about money spent, and how and who to call, like, be held accountable for those things as we're learning a new process and taking on a new mindset of fiscal sustainability. So yeah, +1 all over. Thank you for saying that. It's hard when there's multiple groups, and even, yeah, so thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Who's next? Horatio.
Something I wonder is how, all the time we're talking about how accountability regarding, how it looks from our point, but I wonder how, I'm still trying to understand how that fits with what probably other people or the whole context needs. I'm still trying to understand things.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Horatio. Who's next? Who hasn't gone? Aline.
I think another thing to consider with accountability is that even though we're all, I guess, we're kind of going in the same direction, I also am mindful that there's a lot on everybody's plates. And so I want to be empathetic to how feasible they can deliver on something that that I want them to deliver on in a practical time and manner.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that in. Having empathy and compassion is really important as well. Sometimes things are just out of our control. Sometimes we just have so many balls in the air, and it's nice if people can be compassionate around that. Thank you, Eileen. Jenny, did you? Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I've been thinking about a bit is visible versus invisible work. I don't know what everyone on my team does all the time, and that's something I can't hold them accountable to that if I don't know what it is. But again, I probably don't need to know what it is in most cases.
Yeah, great point, Jenny. Very good. Thanks. Frank, I saw your hand.
Yep. So one thing that I think me and my team struggle with is sort of creating a process of holding each other accountable, defining ways of how we can hold each other accountable so that everything gets done in a timely manner, and so that if there is a problem where we're not reaching our goals, how can we discuss that in an empathetic fashion?
Yeah, great. Hitting many points there. Thank you, Frank. Anuka, am I saying your name right?
It's Anushka.
Anushka, thanks.
I think for me, one of the problems with accountability is ensuring that everybody knows exactly what everyone's meant to be accountable for. And that means, like, even if you have a call and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, that, there almost needs to be a reiteration of that at the end from someone else who goes, I understand that you are going to do this within this time frame. Is that correct? Let's, get everyone on the same page so that even each person in a group or team or whatever it is knows exactly what it was that was agreed upon and what you're saying you will be accountable for.
Yeah, great. Continuing this theme of making accountability and commitments transparent and accessible for everyone. Thank you. Calvin, welcome.
Hi, sorry I'm late. It's actually quite timely. I was in another call where there was almost too much accountability. Initially, we're working on this project with 6 people, and then everyone's like, what about this team? What about this team? What about this team? What about this team? Before you knew it, there were so many people on the call. The document became too big. Everyone had comments, and then that person passed off the project to someone else. And it's just timely. That's actually a thing.
Too much accountability. Yeah, there's something around just like trust, and also this thing around compassion, and also realizing that probably a lot of what people are doing is invisible and you have no idea about. So that was really cool. Has everyone gone? Yes.
I'm still left.
Oh, sorry, Priyanka.
It's all right. What's coming up for me is, despite the ability to achieve a really great social and working contract within this immediate team, there are still going to be dependencies outside of your immediate team, and wondering, how do we scale this operating rhythm once we do achieve one?
Yeah, nice. That's something that a few people have touched on as well. Thanks. Susan, this is a really great check-in. Lots of really good thoughts. Any thoughts from you on kind of weaving some of these subjects that have come up from many people together, especially I'm thinking around rhythm and cadence?
I mean, I think that how many of you in your teams work with some sort of agile or scrum methodology to getting stuff done? So maybe about half. How many of you, and regardless of whether or not you're working within that particular methodology, have got a regular meeting, a regular rhythm of meetings with your team where you are actually surfacing what people are accountable for and what their, I guess, delivery schedules are? I'd just love to hear from one or two of you who aren't currently in that situation, how you actually do it. Like, I'm glad that you're about to start, Priyanka. Does work filter top down to you currently? Is everybody just doing whatever they feel like doing? Or I'd love to hear from one or two.
For us, work comes top down, usually from the global academy lead, usually because he has the most insight, I guess. And at the moment, we manage it via emails, paper. Yeah.
Yeah, great to know. What about it? And one more person, maybe Karima. You didn't raise your hand.
Oh no, I think I was agreeing with Priyanka. We're we do actually do that with community. We go over the stuff and like assign it in a document. So I'm not sure. I think you were looking for the opposite, right? Like people who work on the opposite method.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, Brett. You know, what is the optimal number for a team to actually get stuff done efficiently? And it probably is 6, as Madeline says, the magic number. And so I think that what I'm seeing is like a real. I think somebody mentioned in the chat around in 2.0. Like I think that we are going maybe too far the other way for everybody to like be collectively a part of all decisions and how do we reach that kind of optimal functional level, balancing what Kate says is, and what I think is the most important things to highly functioning teams with this, which is trust.
Great. Yeah. Kristen, I think we saw your hand as well.
Yeah. So I sort of have an oddly shaped team, and the people who I gathered together were more about decision makers and making sure that I had the agency to move forward. In a lot of ways, my budget was very much convoluted. So unfortunately, we don't have our check-ins are more about me bringing information to the group and the group sort of like giving me feedback. But that does end up meaning that my accountability, like I feel like I lose some of that accountability because they're just so excited that things are moving. But that doesn't necessarily give me that feel, and I'm similar to you, which is like I don't want to be held accountable to myself because I will always be failing. Whereas when you're accountable to other people, you have the reasonableness of like filters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
great. Yeah, it would be good to just keep thinking on the subject, and I think it's really worth looking at the little table that we put into the reader around interrogating your rhythm and cadence. So what are the engagements that your team has to hold each other to account, and even holding to account is the end of the line, right? First of all, you've got to figure out who's doing what work. So all the rhythm, all the meetings that you have can kind of help surface these patterns. And the last question I just want to leave you with is, what does happen when people are found to be, not accountable or not sticking to their commitments or transgressing the agreements or not living up to the things they've put on their colleague letter of understanding or any equivalent? What happens when we let ourselves and others down? Which is not going to be the subject of today's call because it's a Friday retro feedback session, but we will be getting into that in a later session. So, more around, peer-to-peer conflict resolution processes and separating what's work-based, what's around accountability, and what's around interpersonal personality conflict and many of the kind of other tensions and conflicts that can happen in teams. But Susan, let's move into, for the next 40 minutes, the teams sharing and receiving feedback. Can you call the first team in, please?
Please. So team Totora, I understand that Pooja didn't join you, and she's actually discovered now that being in Dubai, it's not going to work for her. But Brett, Frank Akila, I'd love for you to share where your work in progress.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about. For the most part, we've handled most of the discussions offline through Slack. We've sort of gave our input within a document about what our mutual agreements are, what are the non I forget the word
non-negotiable,
and the third. So we pretty much just listed all our own opinions on what we think should be added for the contract, and I think for now it's just finalizing the contract and making it more readable.
Yeah, and then I think we were remarkably similar in what we put down for all kind of three. It was, when it comes to mutual expectations, kind of being engaged, sharing the weight or the responsibility for delivering our assignments, and kind of being accountable to each other. And on the non-negotiables, being respectful, honest, transparent, being present, being mindful. And then finally, like, how do we keep this contract alive? A bit more just about continuously referring back to the contract, and then, being able to have some way of holding each other or addressing violations, perceived violations of the contract, and kind of mediating through those. So I think at a high level, we were all pretty well aligned to kind of the key things we cared about for each of the buckets.
Kayla, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered everything.
What did you notice about the process other than that you were all similarly aligned? Is it something that any of you had done in the past, making explicit sort of your expectations of teammates, and like, how did that feel?
So I can speak from my experience, at least. I think rarely at work does this process happen. And, being kind of almost having that hard conversation, quote unquote, upfront about setting those expectations, and rules, or it shouldn't be rules, but kind of mutual agreements with each other. Where I did have experiences in an MBA program where we put together kind of a study group and study team that carried through the first half of the program around core. And we had a similar exercise where we sat down and had a team discussion and set these kind of mutual agreements and expectations. And I thought it worked very well. And, I'm wondering why it's not more well adopted in the workplace, but maybe because there are certain, I guess, considerations when that happens, just because you're constantly working together, you're tied to promotions and things like that. So.
Yeah, I find it bizarre as well. Like, I don't understand why every organization and every team has something like one of the examples I use all the time is it, especially if you're co-located team, like, is it okay to bring your phone into the meeting and answer the phone if it rings, right? We never talk about this thing, but then there's almost always somebody that gets annoyed in the group if somebody does that. Somebody that gets annoyed because the person's getting annoyed because, of course, they're going to take calls that are important. And how much easier it would be if we just kind of came together and said, all right, this is our expectation around these really tactical hygienic things, and then moving through some of the things that are more, I guess behavioral. One question I do have for you is, I think it's interesting when you use words like being present, being mindful, being inclusive. All of those, just like the accountability conversation we just had, all of those words have many multiple meanings. How do you think you could get more specific on some of those?
So our group spent a bit of time last night talking about examples of things that have either felt good or not good as it relates specifically in our thing to respect. I, in the past, have done nomenclature workshops with people because the subtle differences in what something feels like or looks like versus what we agree it means. And that's been very, very helpful, especially with decision making and moving past moments of hurt that aren't necessarily intentional, right? So
it's great. Anybody else have any reflections or feedback for Team Totara?
I think, can you hear me? Sorry, it's kind of loud.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think the reason why teams don't talk about like how they're accountable to each other and like traditional like hierarchical systems is because you're held accountable to your manager, right? Your manager sets your expectations. They're also the one that are like they're the person that's most likely going to evaluate your performance and like evaluate whether you're up for promotion, etc. So it's not really you're not really held accountable to your team. Whereas here, it's like since we don't have that hierarchy, we don't have that structure set in place. We have to be accountable with each other.
Great, thanks. Team Banyan is next. Eileen, Jim. Oh, Jim's not here. Horacio. So I think it's only you, Eileen, and Horacio that are here. Would you like to share?
Horacio and I can share together as a team. Okay. All right. So I guess with this week, the format that we wanted to collaborate and just kind of throw our ideas onto a Google Doc and kind of play and work off of each other. And so it looks like we have a good amount of things that we'll share. Yes, we'll share it now. So our overall mission is actually, Horacio, do you want to talk about the mission, and then I can talk about the smaller, like the more, like I guess how we approach the questions.
Yeah, but it looks like Susan wants us to actually screen share. So
to screen share. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Well, so will you or me?
Sure, I can do that. Okay. Okay, can you guys see this? I have a lot of stuff. Okay. So I guess like generally we all wanted to be part of this group so that we can learn more about self-organization principles and to implement these skill sets that we learn in our, I guess, daily operations. And some of the mutual expectations that we have of each other is to learn and share what we have, and also just to always ask questions, be open about the questions, and being patient with one another. And I guess, yeah, go ahead, Horacio.
It's also about trying to keep engaged and improve by really trying to understand and introspect. I mean, understand what exactly what we are talking about when we talk about self-organization, and try to analyze how that all of that is different to what we already do or what we should be doing, that kind of thing. Regarding the non-negotiables, attend the team asyncs, which I think we should try to get a bit more serious on that. Treat each other with respect and keep asking questions. And do our homework, giving time to the rest of the team to also, to contribute. So it's not just an avalanche of one-sided things.
Holding accountability to the entire team.
Yeah. What we want to finish, Eileen?
Yes, and then so I guess like reiteration is we find is really important. So during our team meetings, we will check in by revisiting these commitments and then adding and changing them along the way, either as a checkout process or throughout our conversation. So yeah.
Great.
That's it.
Questions or reflections from anybody for Team Banyan? So I personally love the idea that you're going to check in with these maybe at the top of every meeting or maybe at the end of every meeting. One thing I often do when or when we facilitate in like multiple day masterclass intensives on self-organizing, one of the first things the group will do their social contract, and that even at points during the 2 days or the 3 days, they'll actually check in to say, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 5, how are we going against 1, 2, 3, 4, to make sure that it's actually being activated, and it's not only a bar of expectation, but something that can be reflected on as a practical ongoing measure of doing. Sorry.
I think that's a good point, Susan, and I think we will ask you to keep these alive in your own way. And we may ask you in week 3 to just give us an update on how that's going for you. So, and I'm interested, Horatio, you mentioned the point around being more serious around people attending meetings. Can you say more about what that means? And yeah.
Well, starting by with myself, I just was able to finish to contribute to the team assignment at the very end. So I think it would have been much more productive for myself and for the team if I could have done earlier and having more contact with the rest of the team. On the other hand, we also, theoretically we are a team of 5, but in practice it's looking like we are actually 3. So I think it will be an interesting thing to deal with.
Yeah, of course. And this brings into the question that the need for flexibility that we have, but also, paying respect to the commitments and contracts we make between each other. It's like, okay, we have the same thing, and Susan and I have a company together with some others, and we're totally globally distributed, and we have an explicit agreement that our fortnightly, we call it our gardening call, is like sacrosanct. Like, if you can't miss it, like, it's really, but then also like we're people that are so busy traveling around the world all the time, and it's kind of like, how do we hold that balance is something that is really crucial for us. So we just keep talking about it, basically, is our answer. Thank you. Back to you, Susan.
Any more questions for Totora? Oh, sorry, not Totora, Banyan. All right, Team Redwood, Karima, Carmel or Carmel?
Carmel.
Carmel. Karima, Carmel, Sean, Madeline.
Shall I share? I've already got it up.
Yes, please.
Hopefully I have now said that. It's Slack. There. There go all their wonderful faces. How do I make that bigger? Present. There we go. So, Sean, looks like you're first.
Hey guys, so we've started out with our mission and intention within our group inside this workshop, and we wanted to work together to get the most out of it. So we knew, what you put in is what you get out. We wanted to be collaborative as a community, and also to support each other through this course in our group, because we might have questions and we can help each other internally and then come back to the wider group. Next.
Hi, everybody. So we decided how we will show up and how we'll be at our meetings when we're working together, and we decided to be prepared in the right mindset, and that falls right into being 100% present. So trying to pay attention to one thing at a time was important to a lot of us, and we'll always start with a check-in.
Awesome.
We also wanted to define a little bit of our commitment that we'll spend at least 30 minutes prep pre our meeting. And then we have the 60 minutes for our meeting. And then any change in the meetings, we'll consider all time zones. And as we think about our assignments and communications, we'll make sure that we have specific tasks that the team in the earlier time zone can get done, and then the other team can review or make edits as we move forward. So divide and conquer based on availability in the time zones.
So Brianna is away, so I might just do hers and our one. So we have a team Slack channel for communicating. We're going to set deadlines and make them explicit so we know where everyone's going to be at. Set roles and responsibilities for each assignment. Again, be explicit about who we're expecting to do what, and rotate presenters as needed. And then as a team, we will be supportive, be accountable, be collaborative, be explicit, communicate early, and be open. So that was it. But to Susan's earlier point about being specific, those last ones, I don't know how specific all of them are. So
just a quick shout out to Brianna, who came up with this idea as well. So
yes, that's great, Shannon. I should have remembered it.
Yeah, I'm really curious about your process. Like, how did you get here? Yeah.
So we started with the Google document, and Brianna had come up with this idea, and it was actually a really good way for us to test our processes because she volunteered to do it. And then she immediately got into our Slack channel and said, because of the time zones, we met on Thursday morning Australian time. So she wasn't going to be here today, Friday Australian time. So she's like, I need these in 4 hours. And then she sent them all to us, and then we were able to review it and say, yeah, we think it's great. So yeah, it was a good way of actually testing out the time zones and our commitments.
And one thing I think she did really well was she said, I want a photo with you guys holding a piece of paper, but she gave us examples of what it should look like. And then, yeah.
Awesome. I love how it's super collaborative, but also someone took leadership and just was really passionate about it and set the ball in motion, which is more than, okay. And even in really participatory, decentralized ways of working, it's fine for someone to say, I've got energy for this, I've got an idea, and that sets things in motion. Should we stop sharing?
Yes, I was thinking, yes. Are we sick of looking at our faces?
I love this. I'd love to invite you to share that in the SO Dojo channel as well, because I think it's freaking awesome. Okay. Any questions from anybody else or comments to Team Redwood?
I put this in the comment section or the chat, but I'm really impressed. One of the things that I know for myself has fallen flat for contracts is defining what success actually looks like or how you're going to measure it. So the ensure part of that contract that was small and little to the right was, I thought, one of the most impactful parts of it, because that's the place where sometimes things start feeling like they're not quite working. But that was a way of clearly designing what you're looking for things to feel right.
I think a lot of that comes back to that being really specific. So outside of here on my own team, we've got a team contract, but we kind of did one iteration of it, but we weren't specific enough because we kind of said we expect responses on Slack, in a timely fashion. But then it turned out we all had a different idea of what timely meant. Some people thought, that meant by the end of the day. Other people are like, I can see if you're online and it's been an hour and you haven't replied to me, why not? So if you're not explicit about that stuff, you're getting really frustrated, even though they don't realise because you've just got different expectations.
Amazing. Thanks. Oak, Kelvin, Jenny, Kristen, Anushka.
Yeah, I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to quickly share my screen. So hang on, can everyone see? Cool. So this we decided to use a tool called Mural that would let you stick up post-its basically on a giant board, so you can see every thought we had here. I think one of the most interesting things about this process was the moment we jumped on a call, we may have over-focused on the social part of the social contract. Knowingly or unknowingly, we got to really get to know each other on that quick half-an-hour call. So it brought to attention that we really wanted to focus on all our different working styles, because not just different time zones, but working styles as well, and that just throws things and makes things more complex. And it was okay to allow digressions because a new team that is all over the world, you really have to get to know each other so that if challenges do arise, you would know, learn about your different colleagues and the sort of things they can handle and what they can't handle.
Sorry, Calvin, can I just interrupt for a second? We're
Yeah.
seeing your clue. We're not seeing the mural on the shared screen.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
So we focused a lot on working styles and what everybody wanted to get out of the process, but also allowing ourselves to really get to know each other, which is really important. So the focus on the respect, the time for everyone else and the different times and the needs as well individually came out a lot just from having that very off the cuff conversations. So as you can see, it's still work in progress. We all stuck our different clouds in here so we could all give each other thumbs up and talk about everything. So it's nowhere near complete, but I think just getting to know the team took us quite far. I'm happy for anyone else to chime in and share their experience.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed the conversation last night in large part because it exposed a few things that I think take time, and often when you're remote, we don't think about. They're not top of mind as important. But in that short 30 minutes, we ended up touching on all kinds of things as it relates to respect and how we want to be, how we want our working relationship to be driven. So even like we took a few seconds last night, I was literally walking on the street and there was a very cute dog and I turned my camera around and showed everyone. And that kicked off a conversation of the importance of digression, but also the importance of setting expectations about how to close digressions, or even how to respectfully deal with them. And again, those are the kinds of things that aren't necessarily top of mind when you're writing contracts, but they explicitly go into or implicitly go into how you feel about people and are really, really difficult to sort of tease out later. So sort of having those opportunities to be on the same page about the goals of what we're trying to achieve, like that seems like something we can all sort of muster through, but knowing enough about each other to be able to have shorthand over time requires us taking those moments. And I think some of the check-in stuff that you all introduced us to on Monday, I think can go a long way to sort of expose some of those touch points as well.
Okay, should we stop sharing the screen? Great. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this, really? This is a good one for the team.
Yeah, I think the point that Kristen just brought up is a great one, especially for an organization that's remote, because our opportunities to talk are always in the context of some form of meeting versus a bit more kind of free form or, in the hallway and kind of more personal. And you have to always balance out this, thought of making meetings efficient, but then also allowing people to bring some of the personality and have discussions, not necessarily staying on topic, right? And so finding that balance is quite difficult, I think, in a lot of cases.
On that point, because one of the things with Agile is that stand-ups are only 15 minutes long, but both of the development teams I work with had explicitly changed them to be 30 minutes because they said that's the only time they get to talk to each other each day. So if they were in a co-located team, they would keep to that 15 minutes, but they've recognised because they're Agile, they need to take that time to actually talk to each other as people, not just rush through the stand-up. move on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Brett. And I think that we can go a long way towards having really efficient but joyful meetings where we want to get a lot of work done, but we also want to, even if we are on a screen most of the time, like start to get to know each other. Check-in questions and other little micro practices and tools can be a really good way of doing that. And it's kind of like this mindset that we think you can actually be more efficient if you're able to get like to actually turn up and like let a bit of steam off your chest, or like in that process you let your team members know how they can help you or like what's really not working, and then you can shift the energy to that problem and, you know, use what we call the hive mind to help solve the problem. So it can actually be more efficient and more fun. So thanks for that. Susan, you wanted to share something?
Yeah, Kate and I and our closest collaborators have this practice, and it's just like a non-negotiable. Every, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day we'll check in, sometimes with a question, sometimes not. But in the team that I'm embedded with in Consensus in DNA, we don't quite have that commitment to that practice yet. And I just wanted to share that last week I found myself being quite reactionary and communicating in a way that I don't feel good communicating, like kind of really not listening, trying to over egg my point and just like talk to the hand. And one of the things that I recognized, and thankfully somebody in the team called me on it saying, Susan, what is going on with you? This is not you. And I just realized that my mom has been in hospital, and I've been like not sleeping really well, and I've been really stressed about that. And I reflected that if I had time, if we had been specific about checking in, I would have shared that. I wouldn't have wanted like any compensation for that, but it could have helped. I think it could have helped me and also the team to be more efficient and effective in caring for me and the work that I was trying to do if we'd just taken the time to do that. So I just wanted to share that even I'm not perfect at it by any means.
Perfection is a myth. Okay, great. Thanks everyone. We have plenty of time now for our checkout, which is really good because that was quite efficient. So thanks everyone for sharing. And that was our first kind of go at it. I think there was some really great modeling by was it Redwood around, and also the team that used Mural. Like we can be just a bit creative, and I mean, this training is a perfect time to do that, to be a bit silly as well, because it's just practicing. So we invite you to do that, and in those team meetings that you will be having, just think for a minute around how you can share back, so we can make this Thursday Friday session just fun. But yeah, it was really cool and really good reflections going on as well. Especially, it's quite a lot of activity in the chat. It's really curious, the notion of being present, which many of you brought up, and being 100% present, which I think we can all really. And I just want to congratulate all of you. I feel like there's a lot of presence in this training, especially today. People are like, I'm looking at your faces and I'm like seeing lots of nods and smiles, and not necessarily the glazed look that you see on people's faces when they're just like staring at another website. So thanks for that. And also, like, how do we measure that with making these quite insightful comments in the chat and wanting to have some of these deeper conversations? It's something that I always try to balance, and I think we could probably take some of the most kind of detailed conversations from the chat into the Slack and make a practice of that, because I know that some of them we just want to go further on that. So I just wanted to share that. And now let's go into the checkout. And our question for today is, what is one surprising thing we should know about you as a person? And this could be anything.
I'll go first.
Yeah, great. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's probably surprising because you don't really know me. But when I was growing up, my grandmother, she's Native American, but so she's Native American. She used to tell me to talk to trees because trees don't tell your secrets. And so then, like, all the way, I want to say until high school, like walking home from the bus, I used to talk to the trees on the way home. And then I rationalized it because I was like, I have oxygen. I mean, they have oxygen. I have carbon dioxide. It's like it's supposed to be this way. But it's something that I did for a long time. And now if I see a really big tree, I probably would cry. I think it's so beautiful.
Wow,
So,
that's
yeah.
so good. I'm going to go talk to a tree straight after this. Thank you.
It's so good for you.
And let's just do the process of picking the next person so we can keep this flowing smoothly. So I'll leave that to you, Karina.
Kristen.
All right. So, a surprising thing about me that I don't think anybody here knows is that I love making marshmallows. And I like being like from scratch, and I like being challenged on flavors. So I went through a whole phase of making nothing but boozy marshmallows, and welcome any challenge. I have a centrifuge at home that allows me to sort of, I can make pomegranate ones, but it allows me to like do extracts really easily. So Vegemite, I don't think I'm going to do it. But I like the challenge. So
great.
Anyway.
Thank you, Kristen. Pick the next person.
Sean?
Hey guys, I've had a fear of the water and I can't swim. So it's been an itch I wanted to scratch for the last 40 years. So I'm on day 9 of going to the pool, and I've been researching, reading Ian Thorpe, Michael Phelps, Peter Vandenhoogen, all the big guns. So I'm learning how to breathe and float. So that's just it's crazy. Next, Frank.
A little surprising thing about me is I like to collect the mugs. I've been collecting mugs since high school, so it's over 8 years now, or for about 8 years. And pretty much all the mugs in my home are all mine, pretty much. So, who wants to go next? I'll pick Kelvin.
A friend and I do a podcast on technology. We called it The Lazy Couch. We have no idea why. It was the only URL we could find at the time. So it just allows us to be to put ourselves out there. I'm not going to say it's even like amazingly good, but we've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years, and it just makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, which is good.
Awesome. Who's next? Akila, go ahead.
Okay. Usually I do a different fun fact, but I think this fact people always forget about me. So, well, I guess you guys don't really know my personality, but I'm like very socially liberal and like really big about talking about like gender issues and social issues, and I'm like really passionate about it. Like, having fun, so crazy. But I'm from Texas, and like people always forget that. Like when they meet, or like even like friends I've like had for a long time always forget that I'm from Texas because they have this like stereotype of what Texas is like. So that's my fact.
Great, thank you. I'll pick Kamal.
Awesome. One surprising fact is I'm a Palestinian refugee, and I moved to the States when I was 16 and was able to have many possibilities and options, and forever grateful for that. That's it.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Kamal. I'll pick Brett. Have you gone?
No, I haven't. I guess something surprising about me that I've told some folks and some people that I've talked to know is that I guess I'm a sucker for being busy right now. So I'm juggling a lot of different things on my plate. I have an 11-month-old baby at home. I work at Consensus, and I'm doing an evening weekend MBA program at Haas. And so I literally have zero free time. and that's my life right now. But I think it's very fulfilling. I'm learning a ton, just growing as a person every day. So it's an enjoyable ride, but yeah, quite tiring as well.
Whew, that sounds really intense. Thanks for sharing, Brett. Horatio.
I guess the most surprising thing, I'm preparing to be a African dances instructor, and that. Jenny?
I don't know if it's a surprise, but to me, it's like a fun dichotomy in my life. I'm either on my computer, incredibly online, or fully outside, like no cell service, remote, being as outside as possible. Who hasn't gone?
I haven't been, yeah. It's probably not very surprising to people who know me, but a bit like Jenny, when I'm not at my computer, I am normally either outside with my children or running. I run marathons for fun. Which is also very surprising because I hated running till I was in my mid-20s. So it's still surprising to me that I run.
Wow, that is amazing. Thanks, Madeline. Susan? Oh, sorry. Who was that?
Eileen first.
I was actually just going to piggyback off of that. My surprising thing is is that I'm a binger. I like to binge eat, binge drink, and binge run. So I've ran 5 marathons so far. My goal is to run 5 by the time I was 30, and I will continue to do that.
Wow, that's great honesty there, Eileen. Thanks.
Why don't you go, Kate?
Something you should know about me is that I have like this weird obsession with hats. I have like all of these weird different hats that I wear. I've got one right here. This is a sun hat. But like in my room where I live in Barcelona, it's like on the walls are all these weird hats. It's me. Susan?
I'll just use my favorite because it's my favorite. I was the first female to jump off what was at that time the highest suspension bridge in the world, the Royal Gorge Bridge in Colorado, attached to a bungee cord. So 54 feet tall or something like that. Yeah. So that's me.
Sums you up, Susan. Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm glad that we now know a little bit more about each other, and some of these interesting facts are super good. So, and great time management as well. So we're starting to really sync up, I think. And we will see you on Monday. And I shared the content in the email and the Slack. If there's any questions coming up, feel free to ping us on Slack. Otherwise, ask your team members. And it's going to be theory. There's a lot of theory in there, but on Monday we will also be circling back. And we're going to hold some breakout rooms on some particular subjects from the content, and also just making sure we're feeling good about the content from week 1. So we'll see you then. It's going to be fun.
Please make sure that you post your assignments in the Google Drive. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. It's been great. I've loved it. See ya.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.